Okay, what we're going to need to put the new handbrake on is a 5mm Allen wrench. And we need to put the brake on before the grip, so let's do that. Now we want to position it in the right place, so we need to put the hand grip on. It's pretty close. Okay, putting this hand grip on may be a little tough. It was hard to get off because it's stuck. It's going to be hard to get back on, so we're going to need to put something inside so it'll slide on a little bit smoother. I'm going to use a little bit of Windex and just spray inside and on the handle here so it'll slide a little easier. That went on pretty easy. Now we'll just, once it dries out, it'll be on there for good. We want to back this down a little bit. Now we want to tighten up the Allen wrench. Nice and tight. Okay, now we'll disconnect the brake cable from the old braking system and then reconnect it to the new braking system. Alright, that was easy. Now, when I first saw this new handbrake that came in the kit, it looked absolutely identical to the one that was on the scooter. And as you can see, they pretty much are identical. And I was wondering why we had to change it. Well, the only reason you have to change it is because of the connection on the end of the wire. As you can see, they are totally different. The new one is marked brake 6. That's a connection for the new one. The old one, no indication on it, but as you can see, it's a totally different connection. And so this new brake 6 wire needs to plug into the new controller, and that's probably the only reason why we have a new one. Okay, there's another little difference in these handbrakes, and it appears that this little aluminum connection that goes to the cable is slightly different than the original one. This is the original, which looks like it's a little bit thinner, and this is the one that came in the kit. It looks like it's a little bit thicker. So now we gotta put the new connection on the old cable. So get that out of the way. Put this in. Put this in. Screw them together, put it in the brake handle, pull it down, and then screw it in. Alright, that part's done. Okay, so we'll just tighten that up a little bit. Bring the wire up, set it inside, and we're set to install it in the scooter. Alright, now that we've got the handbrake on, we can work on the throttle. And as you can see, there is a difference between the old throttle, which has one electrical connection, and the new variable speed throttle, which has 2 connections to it. There's also a difference in the top, there's nothing on the top of this one, but on this one, on the new one, you can see that there's an indication for minimum range, mid-range, and maximum range. And so you start off low speed at MIN and go up to. Another thing you can see here is that the original cable, which is on top, and the new cable is on the bottom. The lines of that cable are different sizes and length. The new one is probably at least a foot longer than the old one. Now that extra 12 inches is not necessary at all, and you actually kind of have to wrap things around in order to make it look halfway decent when you get it on the scooters. But I don't know why they made such a long cable, because it's not necessary. Maybe it's a multiple cable for multiple vehicles. Anyway, just take note of that. Putting the new throttle onto the scooter is fairly easy. All you need is the throttle, the little spacer, and the number 3 Allen wrench. So let's take care of that. Spacer, Allen wrench. Now before you tighten this down, you might want to put the grip on the other side first. Okay, so that looks about right. Now what we have to do is make sure that this indicator light is facing the driver like that, and we can tighten it down with the number 3 wrench. And that's done. Okay, now we've got the handle all fixed up. We've got the brake cable going down to the wheel, and we didn't have to disconnect it at the wheel because we're using the same cable. So now all we have to do is run the 2 cables coming down from the handle and run it into the body of the scooter through that hole you can see right there in the middle. And by the way, there's a little rubber grommet around that hole. Make sure that it doesn't come out, because you want to leave it in. It's just to keep it there. Alright, so let's run those cables through there and see what we got. Alright, so we'll take the wire from the brake, slip it through the hole, pull it through, set it over to the side, and we'll take the wire from the throttle, which has 2 connections on it, slip it through the hole, one at a time, and set it over to the side. Okay, now we're to the point where we can start putting some of these wires together and seeing what it looks like. So we've got 3 packages of wires here in one controller. Let's start with the 3 packages. We'll start matching up the connections and see where they go. Okay, I'm going to start with the off and on switch, and this is one of those 3 packages of extra wires, and it's marked number 2 off and on switch. And on the controller there's also a wire there marked number 2 off and on switch. So those 2 will go together. Okay, so we'll take the number 2 wire on the controller and plug it into the number 2 wire, which is an extra. So these 2 connections are going to go to the off and on switch, which is the bottom 2 silver spades there The top spade is copper, and that goes to something else. Anyway, that's where those two go. Okay, the next wire that came in the kit is the number 5 battery wire, and that's going to hook up to the controller as well. So we just look for number 5 connection, which is right here. So this will be plugged into there. So let's go ahead and do that. Number 5, number 5. Done. Okay, the third wire that came extra in the kit separately is the number 4 wire called charger port. That goes to the controller that says charger port number 4. So let's put those together. Done. Alright, now that we've got all of the wires that came extra connected to the controller, what we need to do next is put the controller inside the scooter and start connecting all of these wires to the wires in the scooter and see if they match up. Find out which one goes where. Alright, let's do it. Okay, let's do a quick review. This is the old controller, and if you remember, it went right in here, and those 2 screws on both sides went into those 2 screw holes down inside there. So now, since the new controller has no screws available to tie it down, so the new controller is a little bit bigger than the old one, and there are no screws holding it in. So we're not going to need those screws. We'll just leave them in here and kind of set it off to the side over there with everything else that's extra. Now we're going to take the controller and just kind of set it inside here and see what happens. Okay, to make things a little easier, before we drop that controller inside the scooter, we're going to have to connect up the couple of wires. The off and on switch wires need to be hooked up before we drop it in there. So move this down off to the side. Take these number 2 off and on switch and hook those directly onto these 2 connections. And that's 2. Now the third one actually is the charger wire, and the charger wire was on here to begin with, and that's where we're going to put it now. We're just going to put it back where it was. Alright, now we got 3 wires hooked up. Okay, here's the brake wire that came down from the handlebars for the new brake, and that's the number 6. That's going to be hooked up to the number 6 brake wire coming out of the controller. So we'll connect those together. Done. Okay, now this wire is the one that came down from the throttle side of the handle, and I'm going to connect it up to the controller. And the number 6 meter wire, as you can see here, the number 6 meter wire on the controller. So we'll do it. Done. Okay, now I'll connect the number 1 throttle wire coming down from the handle to the number 1 throttle wire coming out of the controller. So far so good.